Hi everyone. Well, while that loads, just quickly start by saying I joined the Société Marine Biology Section back in 2014 when I was about 20, and then I've been part of that section for, well, since then. I was co-sec for a little while with Chantal, who's in the room now. So I've been developing my marine knowledge of the islands for a while now. And I want to give you a little bit of a background about the Société's role in our understanding of our marine environment, and also I'll set the context of why the marine environment is important for our culture and our economics in Jersey as well. And also the Société and being part of the marine biology section led me to do my PhD research, and which was part with Plymouth University. Société helped with some of the funding as well as the Blue Marine Foundation, and it was in collaboration with Marine Resources, which is where I now work. So that's how I've got to where I am now. So past, present and future of Jersey's marine environment. So in terms of the first settlers, we have evidence going back to the Neolithic, but also in the Bronze Age, at the Minkies, where there was evidence of hunting for seals and fish, but also at Hugby there's oyster shells. There's evidence that fishing's been relied on by islanders for a long time, and we've got fish traps in the intertidal zones, and this sort of slowly led into, as we became established as a society, there were more commercial efforts for fishing as well. So the conger eels we know have been fished since around the 13th century, but the actual export for these didn't take off until the 17th century, and slowly after that, a lot of our fishermen went off to Newfoundland to search for cod, and there's actually quite a lot of Jersey surnames in Newfoundland because some of them settled there and didn't come back, and there's some of the old cod houses around by South Pier as well, and the rise and fall of the oyster fishing followed the cod industry. So Part of this story, actually, sorry, I should have said this at the start, is to do with we've had a lot of rise and falls in different fisheries, and it's followed, sometimes it's been over-exploitation, sometimes it's been a change in range of certain species, and all of this information has been really important for us to understand in terms of fisheries management, which is where the angle I sort of look at a lot of our marine biodiversity from now. And following, so the oyster fishery collapsed within about 2 years. We used to have oyster beds to the east of the island, off Greville towards France, and they used to form this whole ecosystem in themselves. They sort of grow on top of each other, and you get these big oyster beds that form their own ecosystem. But the only way to fish for them is to dredge them up, and if you take too many of them away, that ecosystem falls apart, and you have a collapse of the fishery. And then once you lose one fishery, you target another one. So following the oyster was we had primarily wet fish being fished for, but then most of our commercial fisheries died away during the war. It wasn't feasible for commercial fishing, and then since then the fisheries since the war being crab and lobster, and then scallops, and those are the fisheries that we still have today. Those are the ones that we primarily rely on. So we've got lobster is the backbone of our fishing fleet, even though it's an invertebrate, so hasn't got a backbone itself. And then spider crab and brown crab, although brown crab, sorry, that was a terrible joke. Brown crab has been slowly declining for a long time now, where spider crab's doing really well. And then we have whelk and scallop is another big fishery here. But these are mostly small-scale fisheries. They're all static. They have very minimal impact on the seabed, but they have quite a big impact on the species themselves, whereas we do have scallop fishing, scallop dredging, both locally and from French boats, and they do have a bigger impact on the seabed, and this is part of the reason why we need to understand the marine environment and the sensitivity of it to some of these fisheries in order to be able to manage it appropriately to sustain the fisheries themselves, but also the biodiversity to maintain the well-being and the benefits we receive from the ocean that supports our well-being, such as food, but also carbon capture and water quality and sediment quality, which keeps our seabed marine ecosystem functioning. And yes, so I wanted to start by just explaining the importance of the marine environment to our fishing culture, and then explain why the marine research side is important also. So, as marine environment in Jersey, we've been expanding our knowledge for a long time, and a lot of the comprehensive research that's been done in the past has come from French studies just across the way. So we have Lehir and Retier. They looked at the sediments, so what is the composition of our seabed, and also at the hydrodynamics, so the currents and how this affects the makeup of the seabed. But then we also have lots of local research that's helped to build on this, and a lot of that's come from the Société, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we're sort of, in the past, we've sort of tried to manage fisheries based on maximum yields. So how much can you take out before you start to see declines in the stock? Whereas actually we need to have a more holistic approach where we're looking at the environment itself that's supporting those species. So if you're from a bottom-up approach, if you have the habitats there that support them across all their life cycles, sort of a nature-based solution that Jonathan was talking about before, if you have that sorted, if you've protected those habitats, then it will sustain those species for going forward for future generations. And that's what we're trying to move towards, that holistic approach. So the Marine Biology Section was started in 1948 of the Société Jersiaise by Ronnie Le Sueur, and there was quite a lot of membership at the time, but then it dropped off for a while. And you get I've got most of this information from Paul Chambers, who knows a lot more about the past of the Société than I do. But there's been waves of interest in the Marine Biology Section over time, and it is driven by having those interested individuals in the section at the time. And the more of them there are together, the more impact that they can have. And there's intertidal surveys that have been going on for years. We go out as a group, and we will do transects, quadrats across the rocky shore to monitor the species that are there, especially looking out for invasive species, anything that we think might cause trouble further down the line. And all that information will feed back into the Environment Department. So the Société has a very, very strong role to play in monitoring changes in our marine environment. And they're also very good. It's also a great platform for engaging with the public as well. And yeah, especially because all of that local expertise comes together in that one small group. Well, quite a big group when we're all together. And it's a perfect think tank to pick apart problems that we're having. If there's, most recently, Jonathan already mentioned the no-take zone that's now at Portlet Bay. That was pushed through, suggested by the Société many years ago, but then due to various political reasons, it never came to fruition. But now, last year, it's finally in legislation, and that was very much pushed through by the Marine Biology Section of the Société. So it's something that we're all very proud of, and it's now part of the Société's role to monitor changes in that bay. So there'll be several different research. They've got their own research in there, but also there's a student every year through JICAS who will monitor changes in the bay, both in the intertidal rocky shore, but also using beta videos to look at the mobile species assemblages in there, and also by putting drop cameras down. So understanding the benthic makeup of a habitat or of a bay is a lot trickier because you can't see it from satellites, can't take aerial images, so you've got to get down there yourselves, and diving is very expensive and can be quite dangerous. So we normally try and put remote cameras down to understand the habitats down there and see if they're changing. Particularly there's a small seagrass bed in Portlet Bay, so we're hoping we can monitor any differences or any change in the species associated with those habitats in there. And again, despite all the research we've done over the years, we actually don't have a very good idea of what our local seabed is. We do have maps now, but they do need ground truthing. So we've had Jersey Marine Conservation. They've done lots of diving with volunteers who've come from this section, from the Société, and we've had as part of making the marine protected areas that we have at the echoes and the minkies, they've the tow video works. So that's when you pull a camera behind a boat and you can see in real time what's happening, and you get an idea of what the seabed's made of. And it's mapping those. Originally it's been about mapping the really sensitive habitats so we can inform management of where we need protection for those. But now we need to understand all of the habitats so we can work out the areas where different species are potentially spawning, where their nursery grounds are, where they're foraging. So it's working out all of those, where the habitats are and where those interactions are occurring, so we can better manage all of those species. And this is the current habitat map that we have. This has been made by Paul Chambers, and it's very broadly grouped. So there's actually about 65 different habitats across Jersey's waters based on the JNCC classification scheme. But these are the ones that sort of are easiest to understand in groupings. We've got different types of sediments. We've got marl beds and seagrass beds, which I'll talk about in a second. They're two of our important habitats that we're signed up to protecting through OSPAR. And we've got all of our intertidal habitats and rocky habitats too. And here's some photos of what they look like. Sometimes it's quite hard to visualise, but we've got sort of gravelly habitats in the top. No mouse on there. Then we've got the seagrass habitat, which is fringed by the sand. We've got kelp habitat, sand mason worms, so they're tube worms that sort of form a structure on the seabed, and they help to stabilise the sediments. They're very important for biodiversity. And then slip and limpet beds, which we don't like. They're really bad for the environment. They sort of carpet the seabed, and then they're an ecological or trophic dead end. So once they've taken over an area, there's not a lot else that can be done about it, and we've got more and more of that appearing since about the 1970s. Then we've got the slightly new habitat, which is Sabella worm reefs, where there's sort of bouquets of these peacock worms on the seabed, and they again are forming that structure, which is important for other species to take refuge in or to lay eggs on. And the last one is merle. I've got a cat shark on there just for interest, but it's the pink stuff underneath the cat shark. And I've got some videos in a minute to try and bring interest back in. So seagrass is very important because it's very important for carbon sequestration, so it's a blue carbon habitat. And in the climate crisis we're having, this is one of the key habitats that's being focused on in the marine environment. There's lots of seeding programs elsewhere, but here our seagrass is expanding naturally, and we're not really sure why. But it's great that we don't really have to do much more to improve that side of our environment. But it's also really important for biodiversity again, like the worms I just talked about. It stabilises the sediment, but this time because it has roots. And we have lots of juvenile fish that will take refuge in here, particularly juvenile bream, which is a commercial species, so you get that whole cycle. And then merle is the pink stuff on the floor, so it's a coralline red algae, and it sort of, again, it doesn't stabilise the sediments, but it forms a structure above the sediments that lots of other species will live in, and this is really important for scallop. So it's also targeted commercially by scallop dredgers because there are lots of scallops there, but then this habitat is quite intolerant of dredging. So this is one of the habitats that was mapped originally to try and determine where some of those marine protected areas were going to go to protect the core areas of this habitat. And just have a couple videos of what merle and seagrass look like. And this is the tow video that we use to map different areas of seabed. And then the second one is seagrass. So it's not the easiest bit of kit to use, especially if you've got a bit of swell on the surface. And you're trying to put it along and look at the screen at the same time while everything's moving in different ways. So it's definitely seasickness inducing. And then once we establish where those habitats are, we put beta videos down and then get an idea of the mobile species that are living there. And we've done this both inside and outside the marine protected areas on the same habitats to look at the differences. And you do get a higher diversity inside the marine protected areas by about 1 or 2 species. And you can see on the seagrass it's mostly juveniles, whereas on the merle you've got a lot more of the adults. I think I'm going to run out of time to go through it.
Minutes.
I've got 5 minutes, okay. I think I've gone slightly overboard on the number of these, so I'll skip to the end after this one. But yeah, as I said before, we're a signatory to OSPAR, so that commits us to protecting our seagrass and our mel, but also habitats such as kelp and rossworm. Rossworm I haven't got any photos of because we don't have any proof of its existence currently. We know we had it back in the 60s on the north coast, but we're not sure if it's still there. We need to do some more research to work out whether there's any areas that could be protected for that habitat type. And that again is very important for creating structure on the seabed. But we're also signatory to several other conventions that commit us to protecting our marine environment. And these sort of frameworks, they help us to shape our policies to protect the marine environment. Yes, and part of the reason why it's difficult here is because we have an area of shared waters with France. Most of you will probably be aware, it's been in the news a lot since Brexit. The Bay of Granville agreement is now void, and we now have the TCA, Trade and Cooperation Agreement. But the key point here is when it's internationally shared waters, marine protected areas can be a really nice solution to protect the marine environment, because the regulations and the fishing, the fishing management on either side will be different, and the amount that each species is being targeted will be different on each side. It's quite hard to come up with a regulation that would work on both sides, other than just a blanket protection from one gear across the seabed. And those are our protected areas that we have currently. So we've got the ones around the island, and then outside of our exclusive fishing zone, we've got the red one at the top, which is the ecrahose, and the south one, which is the minkies, and they're protected from mobile gear. And there's the no-take zone now as well, but it would be very small in the corner of Portlet. And it's just important to note that actually a lot of the marine protected areas in the UK don't follow the same level of protection that ours do, so they're very much feature based. So this whole room could be a marine protected area, but actually only this laptop area is protected from mobile gear, because this is where the seagrass is and this is the feature that's important. But everywhere else is sand, so it's fair game. But actually there's a lot of research to show that you need connectivity between those different habitats to support different life stages, which is what I was going to talk about, but I will go to the end. So this would have shown that, so these are our main habitats that we have, and then looking at the value that each fishery species, which is on the side, so the amount that we get per wet weight value of each of those species. If you look at their life stage, if their life histories and which habitats they're using at different stages, actually they're using quite a lot of habitats, and if you assigned all of that value to the habitats, you would find that sedimentary habitats are our most valuable one, because all 5 of the fishery species are using them at some point in their life cycle, but only about 3% of our sedimentary habitats are protected currently. So that's, in terms of taking a more holistic approach, we need to consider our maybe less biodiverse habitats if they are supporting species at different stages. But of course, mel and seagrass are very good for other things, for biodiversity and for even for tourism. They attract divers, so there's lots of services and lots of benefits that we get from all these different habitats that all need to be considered. So that's where future research comes in. So again, with the Société, there's lots of monitoring going on in the no-take zone, but at work we're trying to understand more about the life cycles of different species. We've been looking at bream nesting sites, seeing where what habitats they are using. There's animal welfare as well that needs considering, which is being pushed through with the Société. So that's something through use of species for educational events, but also for out at sea. How should these species be being handled before they make it to your dinner plate? And then blue carbon is also a really big one that's coming forward, and we've got lots of research going on around that at the moment. And yeah, I will leave it there. I was going to mention the Marine Spatial Plan, but I don't know whether you...
Yes, you've got a few minutes.
Got a few minutes. So this is where so the Société's information will feed into this a lot on the marine side. But so this will be like the island plan for for the sea, basically. So going forward, how will we be managing it? So it will be a recommendation document. So how is it being used currently? What do islanders value in the marine environment? And where are the conflicts? So spatially, how is it being used, and are there any activities that are negatively impacting on each other? And how should we manage that going forward? And this is going to be very, very much stakeholder and community owned. So we'd like as many comments from everyone. We've done a few stakeholder workshops, but there will be a public consultation in September, hopefully. And we're working on the first phase of this at the moment, which it's going to be an exciting piece of work to be involved in, and we welcome any comments on it. And if anyone wants to know more about that, they can come find me at the end. I've got a website and an email that I can direct you to. Cool.
Thank you very much.